England beat Croatia 4-2 in one of the most entertaining opening matches of the 2026 World Cup. Harry Kane scored twice, Jude Bellingham added another, Marcus Rashford struck late to seal it. It was the kind of game that instantly felt significant, fast, emotional, dramatic, and full of the energy you expect from two nations with recent World Cup history between them. For many fans, it felt like a throwback to 2018, when England and Croatia met in a World Cup semi-final, still remembered in England with pride and heartbreak. But by the next morning, the dominant talking point was not Kane, Bellingham, Rashford, or even the quality of the match. It was the booing. 22 minutes into the first half, the game stopped for FIFA's mandatory hydration break. Players walked to the touchline, coaches stepped forward with instructions, and inside AT&T Stadium in Dallas, thousands of supporters responded with loud boos, clear enough to be heard on the broadcast. That reaction mattered because it was not just noise, it was a message. Fans had waited years for that match. They had paid heavily to be there. Many had built travel plans and summer schedules around nights like this. And when the action stopped, their frustration was immediate. Why? Because AT&T Stadium has a retractable roof. It was closed, the air conditioning was on, and to many people inside the stadium, the justification for the break simply did not match the conditions they were seeing. That is why this moment became bigger than a stoppage in one game, because what fans were really booing was not water. They were booing the growing feeling that this World Cup keeps presenting certain decisions as necessary, reasonable, and player-focused, while many supporters increasingly experience them as something else. And that has quickly become one of the defining themes of this tournament's first week.
To be fair, the hydration breaks did not appear out of nowhere. There is a genuine argument behind them. Researchers warned long before the tournament that heat conditions in several North American host cities could create serious risks for players. That concern is real. Nobody serious is arguing that player safety should be ignored. But football fans are not reacting only to the idea of hydration breaks. They're reacting to how those breaks are being applied. Because once the same rule is used in every environment, in open heat, in closed stadiums, in controlled indoor conditions, the question changes. It is no longer just about welfare. It becomes a question of consistency, logic, and trust. And that is where suspicion enters the conversation. Pundits, broadcasters, and supporters have increasingly pointed out that these stoppages also create convenient advertising windows. Matches begin to feel less like two continuous halves and more like four separate quarters. For many fans, that is not a small adjustment. It feels like a structural change in the rhythm of football itself. That is why the reaction in Dallas landed so strongly, because the booing was really about a wider fear that football's most important tournament is being reshaped step by step in ways that create more commercial space inside the match experience. The optics are difficult to ignore. At the same World Cup where mandatory hydration breaks are dividing matches into more stoppages, the final is also moving toward a larger entertainment model, more spectacle, more packaging, more commercial opportunity built into the event. Now, that does not mean every broadcaster or every market is treating those stoppages the same way. Some have shown restraint, some have not. But that almost makes the point stronger. The structural temptation is there because FIFA created it. And that is why this issue matters, because once fans feel that player welfare is being used to justify decisions that also happen to expand advertising inventory, trust starts to erode. Even if the safety logic is partially real, the commercial logic becomes impossible to ignore. And when trust erodes, even a simple water break can become a symbol of much bigger.
The hydration break controversy is not standing alone. It sits alongside another set of stories that have added to the sense of friction around this tournament. The jersey rulings involving Egypt and Haiti. Just before the World Cup began, Egypt were told to remove 7 stars from their shirts. Each star represented an Africa Cup of Nations title, 7 continental championships, more than any other African nation, a symbol of pride, history, and football identity built over decades. FIFA's reasoning was technical and clear, but consistency on paper is not always the same thing as fairness in practice. Because from Egypt's point of view, this was not simply about decoration. Those stars represented their place in African football history. They were part of how the nation sees itself and how it wanted to present itself on the world stage. Then came Haiti. Their original jersey design referenced the Battle of Vertières, a defining moment in Haitian history and a symbol tied directly to independence and liberation. The manufacturer described it as a tribute, not a political message. FIFA disagreed and ruled against it under regulations concerning political imagery. Again, the rulebook offered a defensible explanation. But again, the practical effect was the same. A football nation was told that a symbol central to its own historical identity could not appear at the tournament. That is why these rulings matter. Not because they are the largest controversies in World Cup history, not because the tournament is collapsing under them, but because they contribute to a wider feeling that football nations are being told how much of themselves they are allowed to bring to the biggest stage in the sport. And when those decisions are made from above, technically clean, institutionally tidy, but emotionally disconnected from what the symbols mean to the people wearing them, resentment builds. Because football shirts are never just shirts. They carry memory, they carry history, and at a World Cup, they carry national meaning. None of this means the football itself has been poor. In fact, one reason these controversies matter so much is that the football has been excellent. England and Croatia produced a genuine classic. Major stars have delivered. Big storylines are emerging. The tournament has already given fans memorable matches, big goals, and the kind of emotional moments that only a World Cup can create. That is precisely why the off-field tensions are so noticeable. Because the tournament is not failing as spectacle, it is succeeding as spectacle, while simultaneously generating frustration about how the experience is being managed. And that tension is important. If the football were bad, these complaints would be easier to dismiss as general negativity. But the football is strong, which means the criticism is not replacing the sport, it is sitting beside it. Fans are enjoying the matches while questioning the conditions around them. Nations are proud to be there while pushing back on what they are told to change. Broadcasters, pundits, and supporters are celebrating great football while increasingly noticing how many decisions feel imposed from above. That combination is what makes this World Cup feel complicated. It is not a disaster. It is not a failure. But it is also not the simple, triumphant global celebration FIFA promised. Instead, it feels like a tournament in which more and more people are asking who the event is really being designed for. The players, the supporters, the nations participating, or the broader machine that surrounds all of them. A chorus of boos in a stadium may sound like a small thing, and in isolation it is, but tournaments are rarely defined only by the biggest moments. They are also shaped by the accumulation of smaller ones, the crowd reaction, the shirt controversy, the rule that makes sense in theory but feels wrong in practice, the growing sense that the people inside the event are not the ones shaping its terms. That is why the hydration break boos in Dallas matter. They were not just a reaction to a pause in play. They were a reaction to a feeling that certain choices are being made about the modern World Cup without the fans, players, and football cultures most affected by them. A feeling that the language of care, order, and consistency is sometimes masking decisions that land very differently in real life. The Egypt and Haiti situations raise similar questions. So do ticket complaints. So do access issues and wider frustrations already surrounding the tournament. None of these controversies alone define the 2026 World Cup, but together they are beginning to create a pattern, and that pattern suggests that 1 week in, the biggest conversations around this tournament are not just about goals, tactics, or group tables. They are about control, about identity, about commercial influence, and about whether FIFA's idea of the greatest World Cup ever matches the experience of the people actually living it. That is what makes this tournament so fascinating. It is producing brilliant football, but it is also producing resistance, criticism, and discomfort in places FIFA clearly did not expect to become the story. So maybe the real question is not whether these controversies are catastrophic. The real question is whether they are early warning signs, because football at this scale is never just about the matches. It is also about what the tournament reveals about the people and institutions shaping the game.